Hi, good evening. Welcome to the Barmy Army podcast number 49. This evening, I am joined by Ian. Ian, how are you doing?
Fine, thanks, Deb. Yourself?
Oh, not bad at all, thanks, Ian. And Nat's joining us. Nat, good to see you. How are you doing?
I'm doing good.
Thank you both for joining me. I know it's an international break, one of those times of the year in the football season that we absolutely love and live for. But about a month or so ago, Nat, you were on a pod with me, and I think Zoe was on with us, and we got talking around the issue of some of the games that were being postponed, certainly at the beginning of January. And we said, you know what, when's an international break on? Good evening, Mark. When's an international break on? We will come back and revisit this. So that's why you and I are on this. And as ever, Ian's here to talk about all things refereeing, and he's going to put the world to rights with us because over lockdown, the many lockdowns, good evening, Max, Ian has gone from being a referee sympathiser to one of us. Thankfully, he's seen the light. Nat, let's start off then. The point we were discussing a matter of weeks ago, the postponements, and before we came on air, you and I were just talking about the Birmingham game that we're still waiting on information about. And in particular, we were talking about the lack of consistency in the reasons for games being postponed. Not getting into who went away, not getting into why they went away, should they have gone away. Not interested in that right now. It was the FA's response, because in my mind, that's what made the problem. Now, good evening, John Neville, by the way. Now, by the way.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, no, for me, international break, not a lot to talk about, but there's always something to talk about because this game's growing. People want to see football. People want to see men's play. They want to see the women's play. They want to see trophies for both, whether you're a United fan, City fan, Chelsea fan, Arsenal fan, whatever, even a Bristol fan, you want to see your team stay up, And I think this game is growing so much. And, like we said then, whoever about whatever, the FA are just coming up with, I won't say excuses, but there's things being made that you just wouldn't see in the men's game. And, people say, oh, I don't like to compare it to the men's game, but there's a certain standard that you expect, I think, within a professional league. And it's dipping below that standard. And, with everything, standards raised with money and this and that. But when you sort of, for example, the Lionesses played today and the camera was switching on and off and all this kind of rubbish. And it's just, come on, how are you supposed to get people interested, get people engaged, want people to tune in and watch it when you don't set the standards? And I think the January postponements, that was a time for them to set the standards. Like, this is what we expect from clubs, from players. And I mean, they've said it after the fact, but unless we've heard about little things that have gone on, COVID rule breaks recently, and again, nothing from the FA. And I think if you just sort of let it slide, then people are going to think it's okay. And I think that's what we're seeing. Whatever I sort of said at the time about the situation, about these little COVID rule breaks. If the clubs aren't going to do anything because it's their interest. They're only interested in what suits them. But then we heard the Premier League guy come out and say, if you break these COVID rules, the bubbles are there for the reason. Sort of something strong, strong, powerful statement. Whereas the FA were just sort of like, yeah, well, we all want the women's football and it's great that we can. And it's just a bit of fluff, I feel, a bit of nothing. Yeah. Whereas you're seeing some bodies take it serious. I mean, I think they're doing an all right job. They've got it going. They've got the money. Apparently they're getting free tests now. But I just think that was the opportunity to set that standard. And for me, they failed. They fell short.
And it's interesting because, good evening, Natasha. It's interesting because normally when we've talked about the FA and where they're falling down, we come on to Ian's favourite subject, which has been the referees. And I almost feel as if the conversations we were having a year ago, because it's just over a year since our game away at Reading. In fact, it's a year today since the last time we were all at a game watching the women together. It's a year since Wally Hall Park. and it's a year since a knee slide many people won't forget. And if Natasha, I know you're watching, it's a year since you missed that knee slide because we couldn't get back from the toilet. So much has happened in that year. But just over a year ago, we were reflecting on the Reading match. And we were reflecting on the most appalling handball and saying, how can you sell this game when that's the picture, that's the image that goes viral? And I almost feel as if the referees and the questions about their abilities and qualities have almost been ignored because there's been so many other things going on. Iain, what's your reading of how things are right now for the referees in particular?
They're getting more support than they used to. So, but they're still, I think, I said this, they're still not the level they need to be at for a professional league. There's a load of people clamoring out. You know, there was the announcement. What was it? 5-6 days ago, that the Football Association said they have no plans for professional officials. That doesn't surprise me. You have to only remember that officials in the men's game only went professional in 2001. So the men's game went professional 116 years before that. So it took 116 years for men's football to get professional officials. It's not going to be that long for women, but it's a context thing. So 5, 6, 7 years down the line, when you can get the FA out of running the game, the FA needs to be the FA are not the ones to be running the league. The league needs to be run by someone like a Premier League or a women's version of it. And once the FA gets get back to governance and training of officials, then we'll see some improvements, because that's where the FA can concentrate their energy on, rather than trying to run, the National League, the Championship, and the WSL, which really isn't there. That's not what the FA are there for. But officials, they're getting more support. They're not, as I said, they're not good as they should be. I will be honest, I was impressed with Kirsty Dow when she refereed our game the other week. That's probably the best I've seen her officiate a game.
Yeah.
Obviously, she hasn't done one of our games since that game at Reading just over a year ago. But there are still too many mistakes. We saw it on the opening day of the season. We've seen players not being sent off for 2 yellow cards. We've seen players not being sent off for second bookable offences this season. So there's improvements to be made, but I'm sure the FA are going to be working on it. But it's just a case of how quickly it will be.
Okay. Just a couple of comments that have come through that I'll go back to. Going back to your knee slide, Nat, according to Max, they're still cleaning up the divots after that, because
probably why we didn't play off them games.
Yeah. Mark then goes on to talk about refs, says that in his opinion, when the powers that be, or not just the refs actually, but in general, when the powers that be start to take the game seriously, then only then will it get better. Good evening to Anthony. Good evening, Jonathan. Mark also then says, you have some good refs, you have some bad ones, but no consistency. That's a massive thing, I think, that we need to look at. And then John Neville says, as Iain says, the league should be run by someone else that can make a better job of it in order for it to progress. And we've seen time and time again, and Nat, you and I have had the fortune to be in some meetings with the FSA. And we've had meetings where, good afternoon, actually, as it is for you, Karen, where we've had representatives from the FA. I know you've been in a meeting with a representative from the referee, from PGMOL. There is an acknowledgement that more needs to be done. But for all the talk, we're still waiting on the announcement of a TV deal that we genuinely believe will almost drag the game kicking and screaming. Because whoever, okay, we're not going to name them here, whoever puts their name to this TV deal is not going to want to see the shoddy refs week in, week out. Now, Jonathan's made the point, because obviously he loves to talk more about the men than the women, but he makes the point tonight that Andre Mariners had a horrendous half in the Leeds Southampton game that's going on now. So it happens to all of them. But they seem to be less often than the refs in women's games, and those errors don't seem to be as glaring. And as for this TV deal, we all know there's a new TV deal, but not announcing. But who knows? Now, the TV deal, are we right to think that's the next stage that will bring this game kicking and screaming into full professionalism, more so in terms of standard?
100%, because I know we're going to talk about it, and we said like things like pitches, games going ahead, and all this kind of stuff. You can't have X company, Sky, BT, BBC. BBC have already talked about putting it on the it's putting it on BBC One or BBC Two. So they're going to take it from the red button and put it on terrestrial live. So that's going to get even more people watching it. I think it's, I don't know, maybe BBC Two on a Sunday at 12 o'clock. People are just going to be scrolling through and see it. But pretend if they've hyped it up, when they have the FA Cup, they hype it up. Even if it's just one commercial in the middle of EastEnders, can you hear me all right?
Yep. Keep going.
Yeah, even if it's just one commercial in the middle of EastEnders, bang, and it's Arsenal are playing Chelsea on BBC at 7 o'clock or at 12 o'clock on Sunday, people might go, oh, Arsenal. I know my kid likes Arsenal. Let me turn it on. Bang, I turn it on. Oh, Waterlough pitch. Sorry, it's off. Do you think that is going to happen? And I think that's what's going to drag it up, because I think there's going to be so much money put into, because to get it on at 2, it's not going to be like clubs aren't going to be like, oh, I'm getting £1 million from this TV deal, but they're going to be getting something, so they're going to have to up their games. Make sure that these games go on, because for me, I've said it a couple of weeks ago. If for example, it's £500 to get a game on, yeah, but the consequence needs to be greater. If you do not play that game and we have put you on telly, bang, £1,000, you're losing everything. You never go back on telly. You lose some of your TV deal money. And I think that's will then make them, the switch will go in their head and they'll think, let me up my game, let me up these standards. And then maybe the switch will go in the FA's head, let me up these referee standards. I don't know. That's the only thing I can hope. Because for me, I'm sorry, I'm talking too much, but the Premier League is the way. The Premier League is the way. We've seen it, B-Sky Bid in the Premier League come in. For me, I think as long as they keep the same sort of people there working, for me, I'd back the Premier League to take it over.
Yeah. Nat, thank you for that. Mark says you're right. They don't promote the games enough, and it should be paramount. They should be promoting the game and the teams. But my issue, and I'm throwing my personal issue here, and I know I probably should play devil's advocate for the duration of this. My issue is that there's no shame if a club doesn't do what they should do. So Jonathan also bails you out, Nat, and says you don't talk too much. John Fry. Ian, and this is the point, one of the examples that backs my point up. Birmingham and Aston Villa, I think it is. Very recently, there was an issue with one of them, because Birmingham have had more games postponed at Solihull Moors than any other club.
Yep.
And the Aston Villa-Arsenal game will be scheduled, I think, for a 4th time. It's been
it's been played this coming Sunday.
Well, no. It's scheduled to be played this Sunday.
Yes. That's the key word, yes.
Ian, bear me out on this. Who was offered St George's Park for a cost of £500 and rejected it? Was it Birmingham?
Birmingham, yeah. The board said it would look bad on them as a club that they had to go and pay money and play the game somewhere else rather than playing at home. They said it was better for the game to be called off on an image basis, I think it was basically, but it's done more tarnish to the image by not paying the £500 and getting the game on. Okay, as we saw today, if you are trying to televise a game from St George's Park, it's not easy. It was absolutely blowing a hoolie. You just have to look at the flags. So that cameraman had no chance of holding that camera still. He didn't have a chance. but it still means the game could have gone on. So Birmingham now have a backlog of fixtures. We don't know what's going to happen with the Spurs game. That independent tribunal that the FA said would report shortly still hasn't reported on that. But as Nat said, you know, if you put a game on, you know, BBC One at 2 o'clock, and you've taken something out of the TV schedule to put in that game, and you go live, welcome to Solihull Moor, the game's off, sorry. And then suddenly you've got the BBC running around trying to schedule something in for 2 hours. So hopefully this TV broadcast deal also pays the club like they do in the Premier League. So if you televise the game, you get a payment. You don't play the game, you don't get your payment. So there is an incentive right there to begin with to get your game on. But the issue, as we'll come on to with pitches, is the quality of some of the grounds the women's sides play in doesn't necessarily match the league's professional ambition.
And this is my issue in terms of the image almost doesn't matter. Because, look, let's be completely honest, it has been an incredibly cold couple of months that we've had. Normally, we might have a few days here, a few days there. But it feels as if we had from effectively mid-December through to mid-Feb are very icy, very cold conditions. So to have games go during that time isn't such a surprise. Right. But when a club is offered the opportunity to play at St George's at a cost of £500 and says, no, we're not going to do it, we'd rather let that game go. And my concern here is, there's nobody in the game. Now, we've sat in meetings. There's nobody who goes, oh, that's a bit poor. Everybody just seems to accept it. And for me, that acceptance of, I'm not even going to say mediocrity, that acceptance of just, there is no sense to it. How can we move forward? Just before Nat, I know you want to come in on that. Chelsea fan comes in peace. Good evening. Nice for you to join us. Jonathan says he didn't know about St George's. No, it won't be publicised too much if you don't know to look for it. What's an opportunity to promote the game? Talking about the England game today, Tooney was on fire, get a first goal for England. Well done. Sang says the £500 for the ground was criminally. That's a great way to put it. Criminally ignored. Mark then chips in and says that this goes back to his point that United are lucky we have the best pitch in the WSL. I think both Manchester clubs have the best grounds. I think with their LSV and also the academy. Let's begrudgingly give them credit. United wanted to make sure everything was right. Nat, come on in on that.
This is what I'm saying, Deb. If you're a BBC producer, whatever, I don't know who picks the games, but obviously they get a pick, whether it's going to be Sky, BT, whoever, and then BBC will get a pick. So there's 2 games. And if you see a game with Birmingham, right, at home, no matter even if it's a second city derby, whatever, no matter how big it is, Birmingham might be at the top or Birmingham might be fighting relegation, everything might be sorted. Why are you going to pick that game when you know that what they're about? Not in a horrible way. Everyone knows who I love at Birmingham, but you're more likely to go and choose, right, United are playing. It's not a nothing game, but United playing Bristol. We know it's going to be a 6-0, but I'd rather get that on because I know it's on. You know what I'm saying? And then people will get upset. Man United have come in. Who do they think they are? They've done this. They've never cared about women's football before. Blah, blah, blah. But yeah, Man United have got undersoil heating. I've got this. I've got the infrastructure to make sure that games will always go ahead, no matter what. The only other time that we didn't was when it was that storm, Carla or whatever, Clara, and even City got called off.
Everybody went
down for it.
Everybody went.
So, you know, we've got the infrastructure for it to go. We've got 2 or 3 backup grounds. You know, we've got obviously Old Trafford, Altrincham. Hell, we even played at. That was only a couple of days ago. 2 years ago, we played at that. I forgot what it was called. That place where we played London Bees.
Hi. You and Field. Hi.
Yeah, so we can play wherever. We will get that game on. And I just think, if we were potentially in a situation, LSV was locked down, God knows for what, do you think that the 500 quid, it would be there? It would be tomorrow. Hell, we might even put it at, like you say, Hyde, this, that, the other. There might even be any need for LSV. I mean, St. George's. So for me, everyone's saying this, and we don't need the Premier League with these money teams, but they put money in to make sure it happens. So maybe teams like, but Bristol have had a lot of, but sort of the lesser teams that we talk of, maybe they need to now put money in, and their games will get on TV and they'll get it back, because that's where we're at in the women's game. We need to put money in to get it back, but it seems like the big teams are putting the most money in, so they're going to get the most back. But it doesn't take a lot. We're talking about 500 quid. Me and you could pull it out tomorrow. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and that's what actually is embarrassing. And Mark says here, no fans would be allowed in. So why didn't they just pay the £500? It wasn't as if they were thinking, oh, somebody's going to have to travel. And here, imagine if the Second City derby had been called off in the men's game. Heads would roll for that decision. And Mark just helps us out there that we were at Hyde. And again, the TV money would be helpful for the clubs. There feels this battle between needing to invest but not being prepared to, and almost hoping somebody else will do it for them. We know there is almost a real separation in the Super League. You've got ourselves, City, who've probably got the best grounds. I'm not going to include Reading because that's the men's ground. You've got Arsenal, who've got a decent ground, but even they've had a game called off this season. Chelsea are at Kings Meadow. But then you've got Twerton Park, Solihull Moors. I'd love to know the stats on when the last season was ever played that Solihull Moors didn't have a game postponed, because I think we'd be going back a long time in history. And there's other grounds. I'm obviously not going to go through them all, but there's a culture almost of accepting postponements and second-rate grounds and second-rate facilities. And this brings me back to my point about the beginning of the season. There were clubs who had games postponed because they didn't have enough players. And one of the reasons they didn't have enough players was because their academies aren't tested or weren't then. And Arsenal was one of those clubs that was mentioned. And for the life of me, I cannot imagine how Arsenal, with the success they've had in the Super League throughout the years, have got to the stage where they don't value, because for me it is about valuing their academy. Ian, there's a culture in the women's game. I'm making a statement here. There's a culture in the women's game that tolerates things that would never be accepted in normal society.
Yeah. I was going to say, could you see the headlines if a game at Old Trafford was called off for a waterlogged pitch? It would be, it would be United would be a laughing stock.
And rightly so.
And we were a laughing stock after we had our game postponed against Bournemouth at the end of, 3 seasons ago now, for that fake bomb that was left in the toilet?
Which was embarrassing. Which was
very embarrassing. Which was ridiculous. And United were passed all over the back pages for being absolute idiots. And rightly so. Yeah. But I was going to say, to have a top-flight women's game postponed over a waterlogged pitch or a frozen pitch, it's not accepted in the Premier League. It shouldn't be accepted in the WSL. But obviously, there'll be people saying the game is still young. It needs to build up to that. But when you're a professional league, there's that there. You can understand that. You see games called off in the Championship, in League One and League Two occasionally. It does happen, and you can't stop it. If it's a really hard frost, it happens. But when you're in the top league of a league, when you're in the top division, the facilities need to match the stats of the tournament. You know, at the end of the day, you'll be the champions of England, and you should. It's a case of give them the facilities they deserve, as you say. So, when I was shaking my head when Bristol moved to Twerton Park, I just looked at it. I thought, so what?
Yeah,
it looks like a dump. No disrespect. It doesn't look, and the pitch doesn't look great. You know, I saw a game on there. Was it the Conti Cup game? Was it in January?
Yes, I know the one you're talking about.
It was like a mud bath almost. It was horrible.
Let's not forget the way that we were told that Everton have got a year ago. Everton have got this new stadium. Everton, they've been waiting to get here. It's a public park. It was appalling. So clearly, what we think is incredible, or what other people think is incredible, we think is not even average. Because I've got a 9-year-old nephew that wouldn't play on a pitch like some of the Super League pitches. I'm convinced of that. Ian, sorry, you said about Twerton Park.
I know. As I say, you look at the grounds in the WSL. You've got at the top end, as you rightly said, you've got the Academy Stadium over at City. Begrudgingly, you've got to give City credit for what they've got there. You know,
they were given it by the council. Carry on.
Yes, true. LSV were really lucky to have under soil. So as Nat said, the likelihood of a game at a United home game being postponed is literally the only case it's going to be postponed is if it's unsafe around the stadium. Which
has happened.
Which happened.
Game.
I was going to say, this time, was it Sunday would have been the week the Chelsea game, which was called off. But that even the men's game at the Etihad got called off that weekend. It was the week.
Everything went. Yeah.
Even though United had that game on until probably 2.5 hours before kickoff, it was still going ahead.
Because it was a 4:30 kickoff, and I think we were pushing that decision really, really late. I seem to remember that one.
I decided not to even bother travelling up for it because I didn't know I'd be able to get home.
Yeah. You made the wise decision.
But then you look at, Solihull Moors. We've been there once.
Yeah.
Twice. Once.
Set off for a second, but we only really got there.
Yes, you went off for the second time. Yes, you got Waterlook pitch, funnily enough. Twerton Park doesn't look great. Down the road here at the People's Pension for Crawley, Brighton actually Brighton have had a game pulled off there for a while, which for let's be honest, that's not a great pitch either, but at least it's playable most of the time. West Ham's moved to the Chigwell. That's not a great pitch, and we saw that in, when was that? November?
They've not really moved from anywhere great to anywhere better, have they?
No. But the thing is, though, a training ground pitch, which is what they are on, would have been treated by West Ham's own groundsman, so would be looked after properly.
Yes.
By Premier League groundsman to a Premier League standard. So at least now, but they've now moved it to somewhere else. So it really annoys me.
Yeah.
It does.
I think it's something that gets under our skin because it feels so small and yet has such a massive impact. A couple of messages scrolled through, actually. Sang was saying about how Arsenal and their decision about their academy is really embarrassing considering they're an icon of the game. Sorry, I can't find that one. Mark then comes in about, don't want to start another conversation, but Arsenal have acted terribly over COVID-19. The decision to not include their academy, I think, is absolutely disgraceful. I dare say some Arsenal fans would tell me, no, it's not wrong. It's perfectly okay. No. John Fry suggests that the FA need to have some women, ex-players, coaches, managers, to get rid of the people making decisions that don't know what to do. Dennis says, good evening to you, Nat, and getting rid of Phil Neville was a big step forward. Sang's also come back to say that training grounds are super important. And here, this is a question, actually. Well, it's a statement that he makes, but all the clubs need some sort of bottom line for facilities. Now, I think, actually, That's a really great point, because there is such a disparity between ourselves and City, let's put us there, and Birmingham, Spurs maybe, because there is the suggestion that we're not going to name her, we're not going to give her the airtime, Jake's not here to enjoy it. A certain player came to Spurs and said, I ain't training where you're training. I want in the proper training ground. And because of that, they moved lock, stock and barrel the women's team to the men's training ground. I don't know if they're there now or if they've moved back. So there is an awareness within the players that the facilities are not good enough. So having a bottom line, I think, is great. I think it should be introduced. But how low would that line have to be for everybody to meet it? Good afternoon, Marty. Now, coming in on that one.
Yeah, for me, it has to get written. It has to get written into the the licensing. When you get a license, it has to be, this is the standard of the training. This is the standard of your pitch. This is the standard of this, that, and the other. I mean, there is apparently standards for pitches in licensing, but yeah, I just think that they just want people to get it on so much that they'll just take anything, and then they'll just, oh well, don't worry about it. Come on in anyway. I mean, I know we talk about LSV, the pitch is great, but even us, some of our training had to be moved to Carrington because we've had frozen pitches for the training grounds. And I just think, any Arsenal fan can come out and say that we're this and any this, and then, it's not about which club, because we'll call out our own just as much as we'll call out, others. Like you say, there has to be a standard, and whether that's everyone has 3 grass pitches, and if frozen weather, they can still train on somewhere else, for example, like we go at Carrington. Is it stuff like that? I mean, do they have to write in now, like, every pitch has to have drainage?
Yes.
And I know then that's going to, not everyone's getting a lot of money and people can only do what they can afford. I totally get it. But I'm seeing clubs like Lewisham and all this, and they're getting stuff from Lyle and Scott, and they're getting 6-figure deals. So you're telling me that they can't then reinvest, put money in, Lewes isn't a big club. They just do it right. They invest, they get sponsors, they do this. And I just think, potentially sometimes a club like, say Birmingham, I know we're talking about them a lot, but it might be better if they broke off and did how like London City have done. They broke off from Millwall, a big men's club, and they're going all right. I mean, God, look at our favourites, Durham. They're going all right.
Yeah.
And they've got like this hybrid part-time model. Their aims are to go full-time, I think now more so. I know that Coventry United in the Championship, their aims to go full-time. So I think, someone like Birmingham, Second City, too, Villa are in there back in. And it's just a shame that Birmingham aren't in a way that like Villa are. I mean, it doesn't take a lot, like we've said, for the standards to be sort of set out, I think, now in this license. If you want to come into the WSL, if you want to stay in the WSL, this is what we have to have. And I know people then get upset because then, oh well, Sunderland couldn't stay, well this one couldn't stay. But if we're saying we're the best league in the world, we need to start showing it. We want players like your mate who said it's not good enough. If we want players like that always coming in, if we want TNC to stay, Tobin and Kristen, if we want one of their mates to come, because a baby Kristen, she's just gone Leon, Katarina or whatever.
Let me just establish, she ain't, whoever you might have been talking about, she ain't my mate.
Okay, right, yeah. Jake's mate.
I ain't calling her my mate. She ain't my mate.
Yeah. She ain't my mate either. But if you want someone like her, top players.
Absolutely. The attention that they bring, the attention that's been on the league this year. And Dennis, we read your message about Phil Neville, and Nat did say hello, so got that one. Jonathan asks the question: if we're talking about that bottom line, Tranmere, okay, we talk about Solihull Moors. Let's look at Tranmere last season, because And I'm going to say this, if not for that pitch, Liverpool wouldn't have been relegated because they'd have had games happen. Just going to throw that thought out there.
Karma comes round, though. Karma comes round, so you don't invest in your pitch. Look at you, you're in the Championship now.
Look, I'm not going to fight for Liverpool. I'm not going to say, oh, I'm just saying, haha.
No,
if anything,
I'm saying karma's come back round.
Absolutely. In a few years, surely we want the league to be 20, super competitive. We have to have a better standard for this. Absolutely. There's some comments coming through. Mark says after the Reading away game, you saw what the players said and what they thought about the standards that are being tolerated. If the players are saying what has to happen for the FA, Mark says to listen, but I think as well to take action. Anyway, Marty then comes in and says, I'm not sure if there's a typo in here because Alex Scott saying during the World Cup, if it's not good enough for the men, it should be okay for the women's team, according to Alex Scott. I'm guessing that is if it's not good enough for the men, it shouldn't be okay. Yes.
Sorry. I think this is going back to the Canada World Cup where they played games on artificial turf. And she was saying you would not play a men's World Cup tournament on artificial turf. And then funny enough,
where if these pitches aren't going to move. But do we then have to consider going back to a summer series? I'm just thinking, if these pitches don't improve, I don't want us to, but a summer series, that would fix that problem. Please, can we not go back to it? But how about backup pitches? Ian, you'll correct me on this one. Every club, and that I think you know, but every club
has to nominate a reserve ground.
So what happens? Presumably, you only get your normal ground on the day, and then
so the reserve ground is there if your main ground becomes unavailable. For example, obviously Lee is going to be used for the Rugby League World Cup. Later this year, so that. We'll have a period of probably, I think it's 2.5 weeks, 3 weeks, where we can't play a home game. So if we were scheduled to play a home game, that is where our backup or our second ground would come into effect if we were scheduled a home game, which in our case, I believe is Alty.
Alty is primary, and then it would go to Hyde. But you know what the best thing about that would be, Ian? And I'm saying it this week. The best thing about that might be that we get to be there.
So, but it's a case of on the day. It's not a case of on the day of postponement you move it. It's a case of if your ground was like Everton's ground, say the roof fell off and it became structurally unsafe to play anything there. That is when the replacement, the backup ground comes into effect. It's not a case on the day that the pitch is frozen. You move it. That's not expected.
So, just to clarify, and the question here, it's more of an alternate than a backup.
Yes. Yeah.
I want to say something about that.
Becomes unavailable for reasons, you are still able to fulfil your fixtures elsewhere as scheduled.
I want to say something about that.
You don't change that pitch on the day; you change it in advance. And that, before I come to you, Tranmere. We talked about the Tranmere pitch. Jonathan mentioned it. They relayed their pitch last year, but only because they were playing the United Men in the FA Cup. It had nothing to do with Liverpool women. And Ian, a thank you. Nat, come on in.
I want to say about these backup pitches. So, when we originally was due to play Everton, I mean, Ian, this is sort of a question, statement, whatever. When we were originally due to play Everton, Casey said she was called at 7 o'clock, 9 o'clock, whatever, the night before or whatever. Yeah. And obviously there was talk of it going to LSV, but obviously LSV couldn't turn around that quickly. So if by about 7 or 8 o'clock,
that's
probably
why
the news
dropping out.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Probably the news.
Yeah, you're back on with us now. Were you just saying about Casey got the call.
So Casey knew Casey got a call at 7 in the evening. But obviously they would have probably known about that in the day, whatever. Why were they ringing us, asking us to put it at LSV? Why weren't they putting out their backup pitch?
It might. The thing is, at the moment, you need to also be COVID secure.
That's
So
the
the
only
issue is,
reason.
I don't know. It's the licensing agreements aren't disclosed. You don't see them. We only know that Alti is our backup because our devs play there, and we know members of, we know people at United who let us know these things. My gut feeling is that Everton women probably still have Southport.
Well, they
as
played the
backup.
under-23s. The men, the under-23s played there last night. So
Yeah.
they do still use it. Whether the women have got the ability to use it, I don't know, but Everton certainly do.
But again, it's still the case of, if it is COVID secure, that's fine. But it's then a case of, can they get the facilities in place to play the game? This is if the LSV can't turn it around with 24 hours notice, which is a well-run stadium, can you expect Southport, who are a National League side, to be able to turn around and get people in the same time frame? It's a bit, the guys at the LSV admitted that if they had a bit more notice, they could have done it. But I personally think when you only give a club 24 hours notice to say, oh, can we play a game here? At the moment, that isn't enough time to do that. In the future, when we're back out of all of this, it could well be possible.
So when Mark asks, could they have not moved it to Goodison? Presumably, it's the same.
Can they get the staff in?
Yeah.
Can they, it's things like that. Can you move it in that quickly to do it? Everton have when they started the return of fans to stadium,
yes.
Everton prioritised Goodison over everything else. They said, we're going to get Goodison done, then we may do the under-23s, the under-18s, and the women. May.
Because there was a window where Liverpool were
tier 2.
Tier 2, I can't remember what tier it was. We've been numbers all the way through. And they were allowed up to 2,000 at a game.
Yeah.
But they said straight away, doesn't exist for the women.
Yes.
Okay.
But I was going to say, moving a game in the current climate is difficult. When we're out of it, I think someone like Goodison could probably hold it with 24 hours notice. I would hope, because at the end of the day, if it's internal club and you're starting to worry time, that's when you can start making the questions. You can start asking internally. Then, could you start getting people on standby? You've got 4 or 5 hours head start. Can you get people on standby to come in and staff up Goodison for tomorrow night? And by the time you need to make that decision, you might have already said, yeah, I've got the staff, so yes, we can do it. Or no, I don't have the staff, can't do it. But I'd say at the moment, you can't really do that.
But it's also an example of a ground. And I know they said it was windy. I know they said, oh, we couldn't have foreseen how windy it was. But as an example, that was... That shows you how poor their ground is. Now, you see, as fans, we should understand to move a game on the day is very hard. Get that bit. Cut the team a little slack on that front. Never. But yeah, I do get your point. Mark thinks he's a cynic, but 24 hours to get a game on at Goodison, which we know is COVID secure, seems like it shouldn't be a problem. I've got to agree with him because it's not as if they're having to move across a different city. It's rough. It's going to be similar staff. So they don't have to open the whole stadium. So yeah, I'm going. That was part of another issue, though. I think that game getting postponed then became part of so many other issues that were going on with us and Everton. That then got to a game that when that game did get played, we then had a goal net that wasn't fixed, and at one point was being messed with, and we weren't sure it was going to go ahead. And then we end up, that game does get played. Then we end up with a league game that we should have played in the beginning of January. Oh, so no, we're fine, says Willie Kirk. Suddenly, a few hours later, oh no, we're not. We've got COVID cases. All right, mate, you've also found a few injuries. So I think us and Everton, yeah, to be honest with you, and this is a Chelsea fan saying it, United and Everton, we need the stars to align, because there's just no way that we can ride out any issues. Nat, did you want to say something about our favourite
I just think
team?
as well, we were just talking there about the games and going ahead, and like you've just said, I mean, God, us and Everton. I'm surprised no one's made a drama series out of it, because that is a rivalry.
It's not finished yet now.
That
We'll have
is,
another chapter.
that is a rivalry. That is, God, there's no love lost there. Like, I mean, God, after she was tweeting and what they were saying about Casey, I loved it though. But that's what you want. You want your manager to say this is not the standard. And I don't even know if Iain knows she wrote that letter. Probably nothing's happened. But I'm glad she wrote that letter, because this is what the standard should be and should be at. And for me, I think until more games get on telly, that'll what will drag it up. So our thing, respect the Conti Cup. That was the Conti Cup. That's why we ended up seeing a lot of thing. You don't really see Conti Cup games televised at all, and then that's why they can put them at 12 o'clock on, the middle of nowhere or whatever. Yes, there's no fans, but until we start seeing more increase in games, probably for the WSL. I know they're trying to put more FA Cup games on, but then that'll lead to more. Right, there's now a demand, and I think. When Casey wrote that letter, I was proud, because it just shows, this is a standard that we have at Man United, and this is a standard that we want you all to be at. So step up or step off. Period.
And what was great about that letter, Nat, I don't know if we made a point about it at the time, but had it been a case where fans were allowed in and we got to the ground, and then the game would have been postponed, you could understand her being so angry that she wrote a letter. She wrote that letter regardless, because she knew the disruption and she knew how unavoidable it was. And actually, you're right, absolutely respect. Marty asks, would moving kickoff time back? The only thing is, it probably helped you watching it in the States, but I don't think a 9 o'clock kickoff in the evening would work in this country. But yeah, it'd have been easier for you, I dare say. Dennis goes on to say, in terms of raising the standards, if the England national team win things, it brings more supporters. Absolutely. We saw the uptick in supporter numbers and followers and everything after the World Cup. But some of us aren't so fussed about the national team. John Fry goes on to say the next issue we're going to have at Wally Hall Park will be that there'll be bird droppings on the pitch. No one can pick them up. It did seem like a catalogue of excuses for a long time. So that was also in the same situation around COVID, around poor pitches, around very weak excuses to get games postponed and completely mess things up. And it came at a time where there was a lot of animosity and a lot of anger about games being postponed. We have since had that game played. And strangely enough, I don't know if either of you two were surprised, but Everton they had a fully fit squad. Who knew? Imagine that. That was a bit of,
and we still won. And we still won. How about that? Yeah, we didn't have. We had bare injuries. How about that? Yeah.
We're not the thing is that we're not the only team that's been messed around. Look at Chelsea.
Yeah.
They've got to go in. They have got they've got 2 games in hand, 3 games in hand, 2 games in hand, I think, and they've got to go into Europe now. So if they keep progressing in Europe, their May is suddenly going to be very busy, because the season's going to end on the week, was it the 7th, 9th?
No,
it's going to end there. And they might have to play 2 more games after the end of the season, because that might be the only time they can fit them in. Because if the FA Cup goes ahead, league games will probably get moved from the weekends to midweeks.
Yeah, lower league clubs, so they'll have to play weekends. Yep.
Let's allow the lower league clubs to at least stand a chance. Obviously, certain midweeks are going to be lost to European games for City and Chelsea, so those weeks couldn't be used for league games necessarily. So it's a case of every team gets messed around with postponements.
Yeah, but I think Marty's got it spot on there. Not going to cry for Chelsea.
No, indeed.
Yeah.
But if it was us,
Oh yeah, yeah.
we,
booting off.
we would, we're lucky to have actually caught up. We're on, but
Yeah.
how many games did we have in hand? We had a couple of games postponed last season that we would still have to play, didn't we? Because the Birmingham game got binned, and Birmingham had been binned, and we were thinking, where are we fitting this in? Because that was one of the things we were looking at the calendar, saying, where's this going to go in? We whinge about all these international breaks and how long how the season gets broken up, but in between the international breaks, you then look, hang on. If we do get into the Champions League next season, you have to remember there are 6 match weeks because it's going to go to a group. We're going into groups, so it's going to be 3 home games, 3 away games. So
bring it on, Ian. Bring it on.
Away games, Euro aways. We're ready.
The midweeks between the beginning of the season and December have all gone, which is where we played Conti Cup this year. So the Conti Cup now needs to move to the weekend, which then means you have to move the league games somewhere else down the line. So the fixture congestion next season will be even worse if you start getting games postponed because Birmingham can't play or get a bloody pitch together. Pardon my language. There's really going to be no place.
You know what though? You know what? I don't care. Next season, bring all the games to me. Play 3 games in a week. I don't care because I've just missed it so much.
But the thing is that you don't want to be. You don't. If we let's just say we have to play away in Turkey.
We're going to Spain apparently.
Okay, Spain.
Yeah.
You don't.
Mexico.
You don't want our team. We whinge when United come back from Turkey on a Thursday night and have to play Sunday because there's no recovery. Do we want that for our girls? No, we don't really want them to be playing that close to one another. But
there's the other side of it, though. More games for us fans to enjoy. Mark's buying a sombrero. I'm going to walk through the airport with him.
Imagine though.
I want to get on a plane. I want to go and watch our girls play in Europe.
Yeah,
but
I don't want to watch them play, Ian. It's been a year. It's been a year. It's not ending anytime soon. I mean, I was desperate this week. We were going to get some sort of positivity. And as I've said this, and Mark, I'm not going there, but as somebody who works in a building with 700 people who cannot socially distance indoors, the fact that I cannot be outdoors with 2,000 people spaced out feels really wrong. There's my rant. Mark's not just buying a sombrero. He's also buying a small donkey. And Ian, the bot has... Ian, I think we all get...
You've seen what I've changed from this time last year to now.
Mark, you've been told, and not just by me, the donkey is a step too far. I absolutely agree. That ain't coming into this house. That's for damn sure.
Who says it has to come into this house? We'll go to Spain. We'll buy the donkey there. We'll spend 3-4 days out there. We'll look after it. We'll bring it into our hotel, hostel, whatever we're staying in, and then we'll just feed it. And then we'll go to the donkey sanctuary on the night that we're going home, and we'll drop it off. That's what we'll do, mate. And then we'll fly back on the Friday, rest for the Saturday, and get back on it for the Sunday when the girls are playing, and they'll say, "Oh, how was your trip home? It was fabulous, darling. It's fabulous."
I think
what happens on a Euro away stays on a Euro away. Yeah, it's gonna be madness, and I love these girls, and I can't wait. And that's the best thing that's really coming out of this season: the fact that we've got Champions League potentially. I mean, Arsenal have 2 games on us, I think. That's the nervousness about it. All right, mate.
I've got to say, I'm going to message Matt Crane after this and just say, about 54 minutes in, it's the clip.
Matt talks about donkey.
Mark starts a conversation about donkey and ends up in a sanctuary.
Yeah. We've looked after it. We've done our job, mate. Yeah, everyone says Barmy Army this and that. We've done our job. if we
Hey,
look after that poor little donkey.
Nat, you and I know that for all of the image that people have of the Barmy Army, and I know Mark touched on it last week, we have been shortlisted for a Lockdown Heroes Award. So we might have this image as being slightly rowdy, raucous, in your face, but actually the hearts are good. The hearts are in the right place. So yeah, we're going to look after the donkeys. We're going to, I think the next thing is maybe the Barmy Army need to sponsor a donkey. Maybe we need to.
I mean, that's the best thing about Euroway. You just see like little animals running around the street, and you just look after them, feed them. It's great. And what I will say is, we deserve a Euroway. It is the most fantastic, and everyone watching needs to come.
And for anybody who has done a pre-season tour, when we did Oslo, for anybody that might have been a part of that, now I know it wasn't United, but we were out in Nice for the England-Scotland game. Going out and watching football with your mates, it is just one of the best things you can do. And any opportunity we've got, hopefully, to do that. Look, at the moment, I'd settle for a home game, never even mind an away game. So I've settled for just being able to go to a game, get into a game. But if we can, God, let's hold on to that dream.
For open training, Deb. Like Oslo, I'd settle for that, me. Just watching them passing drills.
Yeah, but it's when you say that people are going to score worldies now, and that's the highlight of their United career. Well, anyway,
less we talk about that, the better.
Yeah, the WFC mule. Tell you what, people will start naming the Barmy Army donkey now. Mark says it here. Absolutely, it's one of the things he misses most about football is the away days, but especially Euro away days. And Mark, like you, Nat, has had the pleasure of doing some of the biggest games in the men's team's history. So he's done European finals. He's been to some of the biggest stadia in the world. So he knows what it's like. And yes, we want to be in Old Trafford, but that's the dream at this point. Marty just asks, we need to film whatever goes on if we do end up with a donkey travelling on a Euro away. So, I mean, I have to say, this conversation's taken a turn I never expected. So I'll thank Mark for that, for throwing in the conversation about the donkey, because thank you, that's been our levity for this evening. So basically, we come back to the same points, which is the FA or whoever's in charge of the games, it might not be the FA, needs to take the game seriously, but also needs to hold the clubs to account. Stop protecting the big clubs. Stop letting them do what they want and, can we postpone a game because we've got a couple of people injured? Oh, yeah, fine, not a problem. No. Get your academy in your main bubble. Get them sorted. Get that game on. Don't penalise Bristol because they had players isolating. Let them postpone if they need to, because everybody else then postponed. You've got to have some sort of fairness. And for God's sake, on Nat's behalf, don't fine Wardy. So, yeah, look after them. Last comments, because we're coming up to an hour, so this has flown. Ian, last thing you might want to add, say, or just let the moment pass?
No, no. What I would say is, the FA need to basically go back to the governance of the game. That is what the FA are there for. We need an external body to run the league. As you say, all the teams need to be treated as equal. I will be the first to say that we need some sort of minimum requirements for pitches, for stadia, for training facilities. I don't like our girls training at Lee personally. They were meant to be at the Cliff. That was the whole thing, was in the press release when the club was formed. Well, it was about 3 years ago, actually, isn't it? When the announcement was made, we were going into it. So it's a case of, they said we'll go to the Cliff. That hasn't happened yet. Why not? We need there's something there. The girls need better training facilities. Seeing them doing gym work next to the concession stands in the LSV is great to me, if I'm brutally honest. Our girls deserve better than that. So when I see them at Carrington, it's really good to see them at Carrington. I know Carrington currently is not big enough to fit them in as well.
Right.
And I know Casey kind of likes being away from Carrington. She likes having her own area. So let's get the Cliff ready for them. Let's do what we said we would do. Get them into the Cliff, proper training facilities. And as I said, then the FA can concentrate. They don't have to spend the money on running the league. They can put their money into the officials, into training, and then everybody benefits. Not just the women's game, the whole game benefits, because the FA are then concentrating solely on running, being the artists of the game, which is what they're meant to be doing. Therefore, get FA out of it, things will improve.
Ian, normally we take that as the highlight moment and the mic drop moment of the podcast, but I think as much as we all would agree with you, I think something else might win tonight. Nat, your final comments, final thoughts.
We can do Ian's point and the donkey point. Don't worry. We can do the comedy. These are the outtakes. Anyway, no, my thoughts are exactly what Ian says. Mic drop, 100%. Get the FA out. Get someone else in, whether it's independent body, whatever. But get people in that care. So Premier League, yeah, they want to make money, but they've got to care about it as well. Just a quick point though on the whole academies now. They are training up. They can go bubble to bubble. I think they're back. I think all are back now. I know Villa, Everton, obviously us, City. I know they've been playing league games, so I think Arsenal must be back as well. I think with Chelsea. So, like we've said before, these guys are the ones that always say to us, you can't talk because we've been here and your team didn't care. Obviously, they didn't care. They just come out now, but they care now, and that's what matters. Can't look at how it was going before. We need to look at what's happening now and the future. How we're going to push it forward. For me, I think, like when Ian said, when COVID's over, hopefully, we can see quick changes of grounds. We can see more men's grounds being used, and games not having to be postponed. TV deal will push those standards up. I'm excited for the TV deal. I'm excited for things like Premier League. I know people get nervous when potentially me saying that. What do I know about women's football? But for me, anyone investing, any increased visibility, I'm excited for it.
Definitely. And just good to know that we do get some things right. A Chelsea fan says that we speak the truth, but makes the point, the correlation between Chelsea's performance over the years and the fact they train at Cobham. Nat, Ian, thank you so much. When I sat down to start this off tonight, I had absolutely no idea. We were going to freestyle it. We were just going to see what came up. And I've absolutely loved this. It's been great. Thank you to everybody who's obviously watched and who's contributed. Really appreciate some of those comments, Mark. But thank you very much. Mark's back next week. It will be on the Wednesday and it will be at 7 o'clock. The men kick off at 8:15. So he'll make sure that's finished in time. And that will be number 50. Strange to think that we're going to get to that number. But yeah, we're going to go and commiserate it over it being a year since we were last at a game. But hey, hopefully we'll get back there soon. Nat, Ian, thank you very much. Everybody, thanks for watching. Thank you very much. Take care, everybody. We'll see you all again soon. Take care. Bye-bye.